Okay, guys, so we are on, what is this, day 5, so Friday it should be, of working on this story. And today we're going to work on a little bit of revising and editing. So for revising and editing this week, you're going to share your story with someone. I'm on slide number 9. Well, 9 because I added more, but I'm on the last slide of the slideshow we're using. And it tells you to share your story with someone else, like a parent or a sibling. And when you're done, they're going to tell you 2 things that they liked about your story. And you're going to write them down. And then 2 suggestions they have, or 2 questions they have about your story that you're going to write down. And then I want you to go back and address those suggestions or questions in your story, in your draft. So your story is not supposed to be done. Okay. We're going to work on this story further next week. But so just like read it, fill out these, and then do a little bit of revising. And then next week we're going to keep working on it. Okay. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to go grab one of my daughters and we're going to kind of model what that looks like. Okay. So I've got my daughter Stella. She is going to be my someone, and I am going to read to her my draft, and she's just going to listen. And then I'm going to have her tell me 2 things that she liked about my story. And she's going to ask me 2 questions or 2 suggestions about how to make my story better. Okay? Now, y'all might have heard tale of folks. Whoa. Okay. Now, y'all might have heard tale of folks like Paul Bunyan or John Henry, but have you heard about the greatest hero of the California Gold Rush? I reckon you'll want to sit back and listen as I tell you the tale of Gina Hanko. Gina was born on a small farm in Kansas. She grew up running with the horses and helping her daddy with his pumpkin business. Gina's daddy grew the biggest pumpkins y'all ever did see, and lifting them made her mighty strong. By the time Gina was 18, she was as strong as 15 oxen and faster than the wildest stallion. But Gina was not satisfied. She dreamed of exploring the countryside and making a living of her own. So she kissed her daddy goodbye, packed a bag, and set out. During her travels, Gina ran into several interesting characters. One old woman introduced Gina to a secret, that is, the most comfortable underpants ever made. Why, one could just about stretch them underpants up to their nose and they'd snap back in place without losing an ounce of comfort. At this time, Gina heard about folks traveling to California to strike it rich finding gold. Gina decided she'd follow and get rich herself, not from finding gold, mind you, but from selling underpants. When Gina arrived in California, word of her amazing underpants started to spread through the mining camps like wildfire. Prospectors would come from miles around to spend money on them tidy whities. Gina was making money hand over fist, but suddenly her business dried up. The prospectors said they couldn't find gold any longer and didn't have means to buy more underwear. The gold, you see, was stuck deep in the side of mountains, and the prospectors had to spend grueling hours with pickaxes just to dig a centimeter. They told Gina that if they had access to water, they could speed their digging. Gina got to work. She grabbed a shovel and ran to the highest peak in the Sierra Nevada mountains. She began to dig a trench that ran all the way down to San Francisco Bay. Then she began to dig smaller ditches going out towards all the mining camps surrounding Sacramento. Finally, Gina ran back up to the top of the mountains and started to run from peak to peak. Her super speed soon began to melt the snow, and water started to flow down the mountainside. The water filled the trenches and reached the prospectors in the mining towns. Soon enough, they were able to use that water to wash away the mountainside and get to the gold. More importantly, they were able to buy underpants again. That there is the story of how Gina Hanko, hero of the gold rush, created the Sacramento River and its tributaries. There are many other stories of Gina after this time, including how she helped save the rivers from the devastating effects of mining, but that story is for another time. Okay, Stella, so tell me 2 things you liked about my story.
It had like a lot of detail.
Okay.
It like when you use the words y'all and stuff like that, it kind of like fit the.
Okay.
It fit the setting.
I call that like a voice or my accent. So I try to make it sound like a cowboy, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know why that moved over. It's kind of annoying, but oh well. Okay, so 2 questions about my story or suggestions to make it better.
Maybe use dialogue.
Okay. Was there any parts that were confusing?
Like, maybe like more detail on how the like what makes the underpants so great.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, so I've read my story to someone. They gave me 2 things they liked about my story, and then 2 suggestions. So Stella told me that I didn't use any dialogue, so maybe I should use some, and maybe a little bit more explanation about these underwear, because if men are coming from miles around to buy my underwear, like why is that? Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my story and try to address these questions in some revisions, maybe add some dialogue, and then next week we'll pick up again and keep working on it.